This is Arise America.
Now, the U.S. Senate has confirmed the first black female jurist to serve on the Supreme Court. It was a rancorous vote and a significant bipartisan accomplishment for President Joe Biden's nominee. But Ketanji Brown Jackson broke the glass ceiling for women and women of color today. Jackson confirmed 53 votes to 47. She earned bipartisan approval, overcoming a rancorous process and becoming the first black woman to serve as a justice on the High Court in its more than 200-year history. Jackson was born in Washington, D.C. and grew up in Miami, Florida. She comes from a family of educators. Her father was a teacher turned school board attorney, and her mother served as a school principal. Jackson cites her father as an inspiration for wanting to become a judge. In high school, she was a debater, attending debates at prestigious institutions like Harvard University. When speaking of her time as a teenager, she recalled the time high school guidance counselor told her not to set her sights too high. Well, today the U.S. and the world applaud Ketanji Brown Jackson for aiming high and landing herself in the highest and most revered court in the U.S.
And I thank you.
All post-cloture time has expired. The question occurs on the nomination of Ketanji Brown Jackson of the District of Columbia to be an Associate Justice of the Supreme Court of the United States.
I ask for the yeas and nays.
Is there a sufficient second? There is, and certainly appears to be, a sufficient second. The clerk will call the roll.
Ms. Baldwin. Aye. Ms. Baldwin, aye. Mr. Barrasso. No. Mr. Barrasso, no. Mr. Bennett. Aye. Mr. Paul, no.
On this vote, the yeas are 53. The nays are 47, and this nomination is confirmed.
Well, our Rise U.S. correspondent Eric Ham is on the ground from Washington to give us his analysis on this top story. Eric, thank you for joining me. Finally, history has been made today with the confirmation of Ketanji Brown Jackson to the Supreme Court. And of course, bipartisan support. How symbolic is this?
Well, it's a big deal. I was on the Hill early today. There was a lot of energy, a lot of buzz. I saw members of the Congressional Black Caucus, particularly on the House side. You had all of the women who were wearing or had these shirts with Ketanji Brown Jackson on them. They were euphoric about the fact that we were a witness to history, that you would see for the first time the first woman of color, the first black woman, I should say, ascend to the highest court in the land. And of course, we know that this was a very troubling and caustic moment because, of course, we saw the hearings that took place and what some of the Republican senators did in terms of the questions that they asked her. Some felt that she was disrespected, wasn't treated fairly by a number of members. In fact, members of her own party even suggested that without naming names. And when we saw Senators Mitt Romney, Lisa Murkowski, and Susan Collins, all Republicans who came out publicly saying that they would support this nominee to the court, we saw other Republicans attack them for that, saying that they were pro-pedophile or going as far as to say they needed to be removed from the party. And so I think this is something that's going to continue to play out in the Republican Party. But nevertheless, as you saw from the final vote and the final tally, which was oversaw by Kamala Harris, the first woman of color, the first black woman to serve as the vice president of the United States. Again, another historic and symbolic moment to have her overseeing this vote. And of course, Democrats were very excited. This puts the win at the back of President Biden today. And of course, we saw in the White House, Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson actually watching the vote with President Biden in the way they hugged and were congratulatory after this historic victory took place.
Well, Eric, like you noted, it's been lots of historical moments since the Biden administration started, and it's a moment of celebration, but it also reflects on how individual success relates to the ideals of opportunity for all. But how does this inspire Black women in Africa?
Well, actually, I'm not sure what it might do for Black women in Africa, but I know in the United States, a number of Black women feel validated today. A number of Black women feel like this is their moment, this is their time. Remember, it was Black women who are seen as the bedrock now of the Democratic Party. They are the most loyal voters. They are the voters who certainly come out in the largest droves. And if you look at places like Georgia, where now this is a state that is becoming more and more democratic, it is actually being powered by Black women. And so Black women are taking their rightful place now as being seen as leaders, not only in terms of organizing, but political powers in their own right. And I think that is something that while grudgingly, the powers that be are having to come to terms and to grips with what we're seeing with the role that Black women are playing politically right now.
Well, apart from American women, I know this is huge for African women, particularly when you look at how she started. She set her goals, about being a lawyer, and she got at it. So what does this do for Africa as well?
I think the fact that, you look at this country and you look at where this country stands and you look at the gains that have been made by Black people in this country. And I think it's certainly a beacon for other people to look to in terms of, what you can do. But also, I think, there is still so much more that I think, Black women themselves would say needs to be done. And to be clear, this was not an easy road for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson to travel. If you look at the hearings that took place, the dismissiveness and the divisiveness that we saw during those hearings, that might not be a lane that many people might want to occupy going forward. But again, nevertheless, today she is a trailblazer, and I think she is a trailblazer that other women of color will certainly emulate towards.
She's a trailblazer, and I'm particularly, excited about how she held her own despite the toxic partisan politics. We saw a woman who demonstrated resilience, strength, and calm. But in all of this, what lessons can one take away from this?
Well, I think what we're seeing here is, again, there were a number of women that were in the running for this nomination. But I think it all starts with intentionality. And President Biden was intentional that he wanted to select a Black woman that would serve on the court, if in fact he got the opportunity to nominate someone to the court. And so I think what we saw again is a lot of this does not come without that political power, without that organizing power that is now being seen as a dominant player in U.S. politics. And I think it all begins there. And we saw that really play out in 2016 with African-American women leading the effort to try to elect the first woman president in American history. They did not reach the goal, but clearly what it spoke to was that Black women would be a dominant power for the foreseeable future in party politics. And I think that is where all of this rests. And I think that's where it has begun. And you look at that now in the number of women who are chairing powerful positions throughout Congress and the roles that women are playing in the cabinet of this administration. And so I think that is where it begins. It begins with that seed of political power that women simply, or Black women simply will not give up, will not give in, and they're going to continue to demand and expect a seat at the table.
And of course, now that she's been confirmed, Eric, what next?
Well, now that she's been confirmed, she is expected to actually take her seat on the bench sometime in June. Justice Breyer, who she will be replacing, is going to officially retire then. And of course, there are going to be a number of controversial cases that will come before the new makeup of the court. We know the issue of possibly Roe v. Wade and the possibility of that being overturned. a woman's right to choose an abortion. That is certainly going to be front and center. That's something she will likely have to vote on. But again, what we look at in terms of the court right now, the makeup of the court is still very much a conservative court. You've got 6 conservatives with the ascension of Justice Jackson on the court. It will still be 3 progressives or 3 liberals. So the court is still made up as a very conservative court, and that is not going to change, even with her on there. Politically, this does give a boost to President Biden, given that, there have been a number of hits that he has taken in the polls lately. But the fact that now one of his signature objectives was to see a Black woman on the Supreme Court, that certainly gives him some win at his back. The question is, will it be enough to allow his party to maintain control of both the House and the Senate come November?
Indeed, Eric, we're just going to have to wait and see how things play out when she resumes at the Supreme Court. Thank you very much, Eric, for joining me on the program.
This is Arise America.